Oh, really? Okay, and Courtney's not gonna make it, and Anna. Anna's not.
All four count as a quorum?
And Emma is not, is resigned. She's a student commissioner.
Can you go on now?
Hey, how are you?
Hi.
Hey, Miriam.
No, I think I'll home now.
Back. Good to see you.
The popcorn's good.
Well, good to hear.
How you doing?
Free popcorn.
This is a gift from the township for your volunteer service.
Oh, so nice. Thanks.
I bought it myself. No, I didn't. Just kidding.
And package it.
I didn't think you would get any rewards, right?
I'm surprised. I just would say.
I was surprised too.
No, but it's,
Is it good?
it says Jackson, but it's really McConnell.
Bill's making popcorn?
You know, I do
It's a
make
side business?
popcorn quite a bit. And unfortunately, my morning commute takes me past the north entrance to the Breslin Center. And, you know, there's an awful lot of popcorn that gets cooked in there. Not really all that appetizing.
This is kind of like a placement, right? Kind of like for the cameras.
This is product placement, make sure you keep it.
Yeah. I think we're good to go whenever you guys want to start.
No time like the present. I would like to call to order the October 4, 2023 meeting of the Environmental Commission of the Charter Township of Meridian and invite our multitudinous public to address the commission this evening. We actually had 24 people for our last planning commission meeting. It really took some of our newer planning commissioners by surprise. But I can explain that in our liaison reports. Anybody have any changes they'd like to suggest for the agenda that's on our table?
I just want to add one item about commissioner reappointments. If,
No, we're not going to talk about that tonight. No.
What's that?
Is that my cup or your?
Yeah, remind me, maybe under staff update to make sure we cover that.
Sounds good.
Yeah. It looks like we have some minutes from the August 2nd meeting, draft in our packet. Would anybody like to suggest any changes, amendments, deletions, enhancements? I read a document this week that I believe got enhanced. I don't think it was by AI, but I think somebody was told to jazz it up, and they got hold of a couple of keywords and just kept inserting them. Really kind of struck me. They got hung up on meticulous. So it caught my hearing. No changes to the minutes as circulated. Those are adopted without objection. New business, solar plan recommendations from the energy team. What's going on?
Well, the energy team did discuss the issue of, what should the next solar project be? And our Public Works Director, Dan, had suggested the North Fire Station, which we were very positive about for a number of reasons. One is that, it's a 24/7 operation, which means it uses electricity all the time, obviously, which is a plus. I think it would be a very visible site, especially the fact that it would be put in the roof and also carports, which I think would be, especially the roof portion, visible to the public. And then I think having some experience with carports would be a positive thing for the township. And so I think we were very, all of us, pretty positive about Dan's suggestion or his thinking.
And if I'm not mistaken, the North Fire Station is at Hazlitt and Okemos Roads. So going north on Okemos, you're looking left and you can see the face of the building. I don't recall carports. Are those maybe behind? Or?
They would be behind, yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. The carports would be facing westerly, or east, toward the east.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Any questions for John on the solar recommendations from the energy team? How does that move forward? What, is that in the current, the budget? Is that slated for budgeting in some cycle? What's the,
Yes, it would be, it was being proposed for this next budget.
okay?
I'm not sure where in the process it is with respect to the Board of Trustees, but we're talking about this coming year.
All right, well, not to jump too far ahead, but I did see a communication from trustee Wazinski, who is unfortunately not able to join us this evening. But she did mention have a bullet point of $90,000 appropriated to the solar program. So presumably that's part of that? Or is it a future?
No, that seems like that's the, yes, because the estimate that was, this would be like a 30 kilowatt system. And the estimate that I saw, preliminary estimate was, I think, $85,000. And so the $90,000 is a fit.
Oh, well, done deal. I mean, if the budget was approved, right? I read the budget was approved by Township Board, so this is done. Yeah. Yay, well done.
Yeah.
So any other comments, questions on the solar plan recommendations or other new business? Hearing crickets, we'll move to old business, the climate sustainability plan. I have this fresh, warm off the printer document here. Is this something that can be displayed easily on a monitor, or is that going to be a technological? Is this something you'd like, Ned, to be the section, water section, to be displayed on the monitor, or would you just assume?
It's fine if you want to do that. I mean, I consider it to be, at this point, I'm done with it. I don't know what else to say. I'm certainly, it's not my document alone, and I think that I said that last time, but I want to be very clear, Kendra started it and with consultation with various other people, and I've, contributed some tinkering, and I've sort of been the person who carried the guilt for delaying it, but actually she was the person who got it going and so forth. And so from my point of view, it's as done as I know how to do it. So if other people want to make contributions or comments, that's of course welcome.
I would want to add that Sam Lovell did some editing comments, which I finally incorporated.
I actually put at the top, the header of the section on water, I put a mention of essentially all the people by name that I know who participated, because it was a lot. And it's, like any piece, it's not going to be perfect. It still needs photos, but I didn't have photos to put in.
And we can talk about the formatting as we move along. In this draft, the water and green infrastructure management begins on page 14.
Right.
And I see on page 15, objective 1C, a suggestion to potentially include a measurable deliverable on the amount of green infrastructure the township will install by a certain date.
Right. That was one thing I left in because that was a question, essentially. What do we want to say about that?
And
How would such a thing be measured?
yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me in thinking about how the energy section is kind of structured to have that kind of a target. I think it's very useful, especially for budgeting purposes. My sense, and maybe staff can chime in, is that township internally funded or internally implemented green infrastructure arises from township projects. That we can encourage or entice private interests to install green infrastructure through our ordinances and other incentives, but in terms of green infrastructure the township will install, that's more a function of ongoing projects. And correct me if I'm wrong, but what's happened to date with swales at the farmer's market and natural shoreline at Lake Lansing are basically township properties that were being worked on for some reason, and these green infrastructure aspects have been included as parts of those broader projects. And I'm getting a praying emoji from.
I'm not sure exactly where the shoreline demonstration came in. I know that there was some discussion of the Lake Lansing Advisory Committee. There was a presentation by the state shoreline expert. And so I think there was general consensus that we should do some sort of a demonstration. So that was not necessarily something that was planned, but it came as part of the vision of the committee. And maybe perhaps the consultants.
And across the street to the west of that natural shoreline is another bioswale that was put in at the Mayfair parking lot, as I understand it, in conjunction with the pathway extension, which came along in conjunction with the drain commissioner's work on that drain. So, if that's how we're, as a township, investing in green infrastructure, I find it challenging to come up with a target.
Well, this would be imperfect, but I wonder if we should consider a number of projects. It's imperfect because some projects can be big, some can be small. In addition to the township's own projects, a lot of the green grants are obviously being used for green infrastructure. And so we're kind of providing some incentives to, 3 to 5 projects every year as a matter of just doing our green grants. And then, the township itself with their own projects, there's a certain number of those probably happening. And maybe there are some other ways that we can encourage certain projects, and if we have a role in encouraging them, maybe take credit for them too, as part of our efforts, whether it's education or some sort of technical assistance from the township staff. It's not, part of the diversity of these types of projects, right, makes it difficult to count them.
Yeah.
But I think if we focused in on a number of projects, at least would give folks an idea that, it's more than one. Less than 100.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's just, off the top of my head.
The other thing that we did a couple years ago is the green infrastructure audit, and looking at where our policies might be more green infrastructure friendly, so that all projects sort of look through the lens. And some of it was simple wording changes to remove barriers. What do you think, thoughts about whether that should be, I forget if it's even mentioned in here, but that could be a way to facilitate the numbers?
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. There is language in the draft master plan revision about low-impact development. So that's already called out in the master plan draft. And so we might want to, as we move along with this document, make sure that we're fitting in and not duplicating or talking at cross purposes. Whenever those kinds of things get embedded in the master plan, then it has a lot more legal authority than the climate sustainability plan. So pointing to that, I think it may be a way to do this. An alternative approach, the state of Michigan requires that 5% of roadway projects is dedicated to non-motorized facilities on any given roadway. So we might also consider some sort of a policy that encourages, entices, whatever, requires some green infrastructure components whenever the township is undertaking a project that involves a change in land use. So I feel like that's already kind of happening naturally with our land preserves and with our parks. and we're greening our fire stations at the top, so I don't know if we're doing a whole lot with their rainwater and stuff, so. Those are other ways to approach that.
Well, that's why I left it highlighted, because it may be, I mean, it is built into sort of policies and goals of the township itself. I mean, that are already articulated, and remembering that this document is specifically about addressing climate change, that, I mean, the reason it's here is because this resiliency to flooding and things like that is a specific category of concern where you can identify, as you said, soils and things like that, that could assist in handling, you know, more extreme weather things. On the other hand, you can argue that those kinds of things are built into, I mean, the ideal of including those kinds of things in any, in policy in general, is already articulated. I don't know. That's partly why I left it highlighted. And we could leave it out, or we could say, maybe try to point to the places where it's already articulated. I'm not sure. That's why I left it that way.
Okay. Well, I'm not hearing a clear solution to that, so I guess at the time being, we can leave that as an open question. I am seeing in the third strategy under Objective 1C, review and update planning criteria policies as needed to accommodate. I guess that either criteria or policies, back up.
Where?
Right there.
It was item 3, yeah.
Yeah, strategy 3. Either criteria or policies would work there, but.
It should have been criteria and policies, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay, that's fine.
Right now. And see how quickly it updates. Oh,
Just
are we going
and?
to edit it?
And?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. I see another highlight down in wetlands that I guess is questioning whether the 2011 is the correct date of the no net loss
That's
policy.
right. I just wasn't sure about the timing.
So maybe staff could ping the planning department and see when that ordinance change was made. I believe that's in the ordinance.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's-
I believe when the township, I vaguely recollect that when the township adopted the wetland protection ordinance, that was in the preamble. That's kind of where I think that sits as a policy. I think that might be the preamble. So if staff could double check that, make sure we get that, don't get that wrong. And those are the only outstanding things I'm seeing in that section on water and green infrastructure management.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have one question under the first paragraph under municipal water. I was reading this quickly before the meeting today, and I see where it says 75,000 residences and businesses, and that seems high to me. I was wondering if that's accurate, or maybe if that includes the city of East Lansing, since the water system is combined. Just a question and maybe something to double check.
I think that, if I remember right, that number came from the East Lansing Meridian Water and Sewer Authority. And how many people they serve.
Yeah, it's a combined service, so they would be providing water to all of them.
Right, but it kind of, or at least the way I read it initially, it sounds like the townships, 75,000 residences and businesses.
Okay.
So I think that just needs to be clarified, maybe.
Maybe just strike the townships because it's already stated East Lansing and Meridian Water and Sewer Authority in
Right.
the first clause of that sentence. That's a good point. We don't have 75,000 residences and businesses in the township, I don't think.
That's right. What do we have? 85,000, something like that.
I always feel like we have about 50,000 residents, but I don't think we have 50,000 residences.
Yeah, that's
I
what
think it's probably more like 20.
Yeah, I don't know, but I know that the U.S. Census will have that information available on quick facts on their website.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and our assessor's office knows exactly how many
Yeah.
properties are there. So, yeah, we should have that number correct. But I think if we got that 75,000 from the Water and Sewer Authority, just strike the townships and we should be good.
Yeah.
It's already stricken. God, it's gone. Say it shall be so. Did you have a different comment as well?
I don't know.
Just because we're talking about water, I should mention, not in official capacity, I did attend like an open house for the work that's being done in the Montgomery drain that drains Frandor across to the old Red Cedar Golf Course, which is now being built up in those multi-story apartments over businesses. It was a very thorough presentation on a very, very sunny day with no shade. So it was brilliant. But it's pretty amazing, the work that's been done there. I've seen the ponds that are between Michigan Ave and the river, behind those new buildings. But I hadn't seen the ponds that were built up east of Frandor. The sledding hill is a lot taller now, because they dug a whole bunch of other ponds there, and a system of transferring water between them, pumping and filtering. And the design objective is to reduce the pollutant load coming through that drain into the Red Cedar River by over 90%.
Wow.
And the hope is that that area will no longer be contributing storm surge to the river. But the water that falls on that area will eventually make its way to the river, but not as part of the storm surge. It will filter out later when most every place else has drained. And the next thing you'll see is a water feature in the Michigan Ave Boulevard between the view and the new buildings. I think they call it the Edge. Something like that. That's going to be a fountain that'll do part of the aeration of this water that's coming off of being pumped around it. So between that and what's going on at around Lake Lansing and what's happened at Walden Pond and some of the other big drain projects that are going on, it's pretty clear that the Drain Commissioner's office is already well in my view, taking a pretty innovative and a progressive approach to try to manage as much stormwater as well as possible. It would be easy for us to be complacent and say we should continue to exalt our administration, because it's an elected office and that person can be replaced at any time. So having something in here, I think is important. It might read better if it was more like expand on successful, I think I read, partner with the Ingham County Drain Commissioner. And I think we might want to be stronger than that, I don't know. But the way we typically as a township partner with the Drain Commissioner, in my experience, is a development project comes to the planning department and they look at it and they say, well, there's going to be, stormwater considerations, so make sure that the Drain Commissioner signs off on it. When they do, that's kind of it. Unless there's wetland impacts that require a wetland use permit, which we haven't seen in years.
Yeah.
So just a discussion point. Thoughts?
Would it be worth it to go and actually have a conversation with the Drain Commissioner about, he won't live forever. Although he's done a pretty good job of running for quite a while in that position, in good ways.
Sure, and there's lots of ways to do that. At the last planning commission meeting, one of the deputy drainage commissioners was in attendance speaking about some implications of a project that's been proposed. And
Which one?
Carla, close.
Oh, sure.
And she mentioned that his office is looking to expand collaboration, to be more present in township discussions of things. So I guess that's part of what's in the back of my mind of saying, well, let's, invite them to come and, talk to us about what they've done and what they're doing and how we can better partner is kind of an action item that I see. So I guess I'm kind of trying to juice up the strategy to get it as an action item.
No, she used to be on the Environmental Commission, and we had sort of a direct line to the Drain Commissioner. Maybe it might be a good idea to ask them what they would perceive as, sort of the best way to articulate this value.
Yeah, I think that'd be really nice. We haven't had a speaker at the commission for quite a while, and I think it could be really interesting.
Yeah.
Left up to me, that strategy number one, in place of partner with, it would be strengthen partnership with. So that's my 2 cents.
The Frandor, that situation was obviously a major problem. Are we aware of any similar sorts of problems in Meridian Township, that there's a certain area that is a major contributor?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's what we just rebuilt under Okemos and Grand River.
okay,
And it's 2 different drains that converge there. And the project plan is to create the new Okemos consolidated drain.
okay,
If you look at what they put in that intersection, you can walk through the pipes.
okay,
I mean, you'd have to punch, but.
yeah,
So it's major increase in flow, and that's, from what I've heard, the main, next big thing in the township is the Okemos consolidated. It's basically draining the mall.
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
And a whole bunch of other stuff.
yeah,
Well, it's more or less similar to Frandor. You've got acres and acres of impervious surface that are uphill from the river.
And I'm pretty sure it drains Ottawa Hills and several of the other neighborhoods north and sort of south of this CN tracks.
Will there be, green infrastructure kind of planned into that to kind of help the situation?
Yeah, right.
The last I heard, there was a recent development project in that area, not actually on the Frandor property, but next door, the Buddy's Pizza. The drain commissioner required stormwater detention as a condition of that. And that was built to the west of Best Buy and over there towards Okemos Road. So they created some storage there. And then when MDOT came through to make the changes to the elevation of the roadway in the intersection and in front of Playmakers, they also required some compensation. So they went out behind the new fire station and dug a big hole.
Oh, okay,
And I heard that there was an idea to put some solar arrays on that hill because it's prominent. It gets good light. Not really green infrastructure, but and I've seen herons flying out of that new pond.
oh,
So I don't know that it was necessarily designed as green infrastructure, but it seems to be serving the purpose
okay.
well. And that might be a spot to look at and see, is there more that could be done there besides the solar array or other things?
Isn't there a big chunk of wetland north of Grand River where the sidewalk was collapsing or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah, the last time there was a big rain, I noticed the drain at the west end of that wetland was actually bubbling.
Oh, really?
And my understanding is, I haven't got confirmation of this, that that's a direct conduit, culvert to the Red Cedar River. And what it's doing when the river rises fast enough is basically to accept some storage
Yeah.
on the north side of the road there, because now it's contained, it's got a proper embankment, it can hold it,
Right.
and then let it back into the river when it, a purposeful backwater, I think is what that is. But it's all wetland plants, right? Oh. Are there any other thoughts, comments, suggestions on the water and wetlands, green infrastructure portion of the plan? Are there any other portions of the plan that anybody would like to discuss this evening? I think we've given staff a couple of little tasks and some online picture editing already done. Bada boom. If there's nothing else about the climate sustainability plan, then any other business? Old business? Hearing none. Yep, go ahead.
Well, related to the plan, what now needs to be done, or what are the next steps? Looks like we're getting very close.
We are getting very close, and
I know there's an interest in having more photos and more, that's
You're right.
a piece, I know.
yes,
but
there was a suggestion that we, my understanding from the revision of the master plan is that the township's communications department has adopted not only the branding that you see around the room, but also some brand standards in terms of content that's put online. And so the master plan is now being, it now sits in the form of a flip snack. If you're not familiar with it, it's a magazine format that you can tab through. So it's very intuitive for a phone or a keyboardless device. And, and I've heard from folks in other groups like libraries and others that that's a pretty well adopted format that for public documents, for public consumption. It easily accepts a lot of pictures and graphics, and you minimize the text that's on the page. And I'm reluctant to do that too early, because once it goes into that format, the number of people who can edit it goes down to a very small number. But in terms of sending a document out for public comment, you're much more likely to get a response to that than to this sort of a bulleted Word document. So I think that's a good move at some point. So I think our next task may be to decide when we're comfortable enough with the content that we've got to have it migrated into that new format, and what's the timeline of the communications department in facilitating that migration. My sense is that there's a bit of a learning curve with software, so as somebody who's pretty much done learning software, I'm kind of reticent to judge how that might go. But I guess maybe if staff can check with the communications department and see what does that process look like, that'd be helpful. And then especially getting a sense from them of how editing would happen once it's migrated. Would any of us have the ability, if we had the skill, to go in and do that, or could you, Laura, be able to handle that, or is that something that would have to go back and forth to the communications department? Because they're doing a lot and they don't need to be overwhelmed by a whole bunch of copy editing that we're trying to do. I think I would be most comfortable having a formal motion to basically make the plan available for wide publication by the commission at some point when we're ready for that.
With respect to the township board, at what point do they approve the update, the plan, or how does that whole thing work, would you say?
I believe last time it was probably a formal presentation to the township board, also on their agenda when they have time, and maybe a resolution in their packet that they would adopt the revised plan.
Yes. Yep.
I'm trying to recall the language that's in the current draft of the master plan, the revised master plan, that speaks to the climate sustainability plan. That makes reference to the town, that pathway plan, and it used to make reference to the green space plan, and to the climate sustainability plan, and
I can check with the planning department on that.
Yeah.
The timing on that. Sure.
well, the timing and the language, if there's that whole language of adopting by reference, which basically means we ascribe to all of those principles, and if it changes, we're still ascribed to them, which is kind of handy. That's a nice little parliamentary trick. And my sense is that just from the discussion we've had so far, that the energy section and now the water section are pretty well done, and the food section still has some work to do, and I'd prefer to have the folks involved in that kind of lead a discussion and say, okay, we're comfortable taking it to the next step. We don't see a whole lot of copy editing down the road. So maybe call that out specifically on next agenda to speak directly to the healthy food systems and transportation sections of the draft. And
No, Anna Colby did have a round of edits in this latest version that you see. I'm not sure if she had completed them, but we can certainly check with her on that.
yeah, and if she's got that all done, if she can join us next time, then we can have a look at it and see if we're comfortable moving it forward to the next stage.
Cool.
Thanks for reminding me of that. Anything else about the climate sustainability plan?
Just a question about the township itself. When the township, prepares other documents, is there any sort of body of policy about formatting or anything like that? 'Cause, I mean, we've spent probably multiple $1 million on rebranding and putting signage around the township and so forth, and I'm just wondering about documents that.
Well, it's, maybe I wasn't making myself clear. When the communications department adopted a format for distributing documents, I think that was at the direction of the board.
That was, okay. Okay.
Because I'm pretty sure there was, software purchase and training and all sorts of other things that went into that.
Yeah, I didn't.
Just like the new monitors and the microphones, and I think they're, but certainly, we should also, if, next time we do get to a point where we're comfortable, we should put Courtney on the hot seat to make sure we're not breaking the protocol.
Rules, yeah.
Yeah, and because ultimately, she's the one I'm hoping will put it on the board's agenda and say, okay, we're ready to, last time we talked to you, you said, give us something more complete. Here it is. Here's what it looks like.
Right.
So I think that the supervisor will be open to that when their agenda allows. All right, we'll move along. Reports and announcements. This is the fun part. Staff, first and foremost.
I think most of you saw the latest list of environmental commissioners. I was informed that Emma is committed for work, so she wants to scale back for the rest of her term. I did receive a response from Tom and John about wanting to be reappointed, and the assistant manager wants to just know if there are any other changes for those commissioners that will be reappointed. Now, I apologize because Graham, you're on a 3-year term, correct?
I think so. I think the term is like January 1st, 2025 or something.
Yeah, so that is not reflected on this latest one that I distributed, I don't believe. So that should be 2025. That's one change. But the other people that are not, that will be expired in the end of this year include Anna, Kendra, Ned, did you indicate that you wanted to be reappointed? Or are you still deciding?
I'm still deciding.
Okay. Amelia, you're
I would
one
like
term.
to continue.
You want to, okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Sorry, I didn't know you about that.
Server, yay, and let's see. I'm in it for life. Or till death do us part, whatever. Anyway, let's see. McConnell's good through 25, so I guess we just need to check with Anna
How did the whole 2025 thing happen?
and Ned. Of course, you can resign anytime you want, Bill.
All right.
Officially, we just want to update those. Do you want to add anything, Tom or John or anybody?
I guess I just kind of had a question. It seems like a lot of us are expiring at the same time. And usually commissions are spaced out better, so you don't have quite the potential turnover that we could have. And I don't know if you can answer this, but I'm just kind of curious as to why so many of us are expiring this year.
We must have had a strong recruiting class at some point, quite a while ago.
Well, I think
If you can't,
sort
that's
of
fine.
a historical point of
That
view.
is kind of unique.
I can imagine some reasons, but I'm sure the clerk's office has the information. I mean, if somebody leaves in the middle of a term, and that's going to get stacked on to the people who's naturally leaving at the end of that term, and so ebbs and flows.
So we do have an opening for another student alternate. And then, does somebody want to check with Kendra more directly?
I can do that.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, do you want to check with Anna as well, or does somebody want to check with Anna?
Yeah, I can reach out to her as well.
Okay, awesome. And then Ned will be flipping a coin. No, just kidding.
Yeah, you know, the whole retirement thing keeps looming and it's further away every day, and yet there's so many elements in the consideration.
Okay, thank you. That was the one thing I just wanted to address. And then I wanted to thank Ned for agreeing to lead the bike tour on Saturday. The eco tour is happening, and
Sure.
if you haven't seen it in the Green Gazette, you can just watch their copies. There's an auto tour, and then there's a bike tour. Bike tour starts at 10, and then the auto tour starts at 11. There are maps here, and we're also going to have a presence at the market from 9 to noon. And Absolute Solar staff are going to be there.
Yeah.
And one of our green team members, Sarah Allen, is going to be there.
Sorry, my Siri activated. Not sure why.
Siri, help us.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see, that was the main thing that I wanted to share. There's probably some other important stuff that I'll think of once you've moved on.
Let's see if we can spur you on. Anyone have any liaison reports? John?
Yeah, the Solarize program is, I think, going well. The last one we did was in partnership with the city of Lansing, and they did get 11 buys out of the group, and so all the participants that are going ahead with buy will get the 11% discount. And the next, and I think the last session for this year is going to be October 17th at 6 PM on Zoom. If, I think, Leroy, correct me if I got that right, I think it's October 17th at 6 PM. And so that we've had, I think, a pretty good year, you know.
I believe somebody was contacted by a news organization wanting an interview about green projects.
Yes, the green grants.
Green grants.
Yeah, I talked to a student at MSU, if
Okay.
that's what you're
Yeah.
referring to. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was fine. I'm not sure,
Is that destined for a news piece or
I don't know.
class assignment sort of deal?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Sorry, that you just triggered my,
Yeah.
It is the 17th at 6 PM.
It is the 17th at 6 PM. Okay. And if anybody's out there listening, or how would they find out information?
Come to the farmer's market on Saturday.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Hoping for a flyer fairly soon from a draft flyer from the organizers.
Okay. Yep.
Green Team? Yeah, Green Team had its electronic collection event back on September 23rd. Probably most of you have heard by now, it was very successful. We had over 400 vehicles come through that day. Over one semi-trailer full of electronics were collected. We also had, we were collecting coats that day to give away for this winter season. Bags of coats were collected that day as well. And then we partnered with Consumers Energy, and they collected appliances. I think over 40 appliances were collected that day. We had 60 plus volunteers, so we had a good group of volunteers. A lot of them, again, were from Okemos High School, so thank you for all the Okemos High School students who came out to help that day. And of course, there was others, a lot of the employees from the township this year too, so that was good to have. Excuse me, Leroy already mentioned our solar and eco tour this Saturday, and the Green Team will be set up at the market from 9 to noon that day, and then not much is planned over the winter months, so we're going to be taking a bit of a break, but we'll gear up again early next year. I think that's about it.
thank you. I'm just having all sorts of random thoughts this evening. Have we heard anything about the application, the grant application for the drop-off center at the service center?
We did not receive it, unfortunately. Yeah, and, well, we can discuss this at a later time, but that is one of the key components under the waste and recycling section of the sustainability plan. So we may want to have a discussion about that at some point, whether to continue to highlight that or not. Not that I think the township is ready to give up on it, but we don't seem to be scoring extremely well with that grant application. So we may want to have some further discussions on that.
Can you give us some order of magnitude of the kind of cost that is being estimated? Is it 100,000, a million, 10 million, 50 million? What sort of?
I'm going to have to
I think
defer
we're about
to
at
Leroy.
$500 million roughly.
Okay.
A lot of that was the site renovation and the preparation. I don't think it was so much of a scoring issue as it just they had about 40% less money to go around this time. They didn't have any problems with their application that they shared with us when we did a follow-up meeting. But they did encourage us to reapply next year when there will be even less money potentially. Maybe rethinking our proposal a little bit, but I think your suggestion for having a discussion about next steps would be good.
Do we know anything about who did get funded and what the priorities were as expressed by?
We didn't get a full rundown on that. I think there was some also sentiment that because there are some needier rural communities that really have no recycling options. So there was sort of recycling deserts, so to speak, that were probably received a higher priority this round.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the fact that we already have a recycling drop-off and are looking at kind of adding another doesn't necessarily bode real favorably, but.
Okay. My understanding is that proposal did not include organics, any form of organics collection beyond perhaps a couple of bins from My Green Michigan kind of deal, but not an actual composting operation was not part of that.
Right. We did mention the recent expansion of food collection, but it wasn't something that was going to be funded by that grant.
Right.
Obviously, a new location would offer the possibilities for another bin or two for food collection, but it was not a huge part of our proposal.
Okay. I think you're right, Tom, to point out we want to look at what we're prioritizing in our plan so that we're not talking about stuff we're no longer going after. But I do think that the landscape of solid waste in Michigan is dynamic, and the legislative landscape, the administrative landscape is due to change. So looking down the road to how we can be more successful in attracting outside support for the future of solid waste management seems like what the plans would be.
Right, and I don't want to leave you with the impression that the township's not interested in pursuing this, but I'm just kind of thinking out loud that being realistic, it is one of the top priorities currently in the plan, and maybe we need to talk about that a little bit.
There is some interest from the food team in looking at more organics. And
Well, I guess that's where I was going with that is if that makes a more appealing proposal to a broader group of folks who are interested in something more than aluminum and paper, then maybe that could be part of it. I know there was discussion about whether that application should focus on a renovation of the existing drop-off site or the spot behind the service center, and I wasn't part of those discussions, but I'm curious if there was also discussion about something a bit more distributed, maybe at other township locations that could also accommodate smaller collection bins. I'm thinking parks. I mean, we empty the trash cans. Could we not empty an aluminum can bin? It's a different equipment that has to go down and pick it up and dump it, but, you know, I'm just curious if sorry, I'm thinking out of the box late in the day.
And I think some of the concern in the past with parks has been contamination, that there's no real way to keep people from dumping just garbage in there as well, and things get contaminated, so that is a problem.
Yeah, and certainly the service center has a better level of sort of security and safety kind of built into it. And plus they got the equipment there to help keep it. There's lots of good reasons to do that. I'm just trying to think out of the box. Anything else from Green Team?
No, I don't think so.
All right, Green to Brown, Brownfield.
No news, no meeting.
No news, no meeting.
And unfortunately, I will be away for the October meeting that may or may not happen. I have no no news about that either yet. But Tim Schmidt usually lets us know a couple weeks before it happens, so I haven't heard anything yet, but no news. But just to sort of point out what things are happening, of course, if you've gone by what used to be the old L&L area on Hazlitt Road, just to the west of where Marsh crosses, they've now fenced off the whole area. So I assume this is the next step in demo of the old buildings and moving forward with a new project. And what is going to be retirement, what's the name of the village? I've forgotten. I'm losing my mind. Anyway, the construction for what is going to be at the western end is pretty advanced. I mean, they're putting facades on and so forth. It's actually looking like buildings at this point.
Were there many brownfield concerns in that corner? Were there gas stations and such?
There had been, I think, a dry cleaning place at one point, so they had to put in it's not quite as extensive as what they had designed for the Okemos Town Center, whatever you want to call it, project, but they needed to put in some kind of air handling to make sure that the air quality was good, even though there's a little bit of leftover contamination in the soil. It's always interesting to me as a chemist, I look at those things and I say, well, either you should dig it all up and get it out of there and not have to have, fans running all the time that can then eventually fail and so forth. But that's a pretty simple-minded thing to do, and there's always the question of where you're going to put it if you dig it up and take it away, and what are you going to replace it with. So all of these things do come down to dollars and cents, and there are methods for essentially mitigating in place, which is what they're doing.
Any committees, clubs?
I can speak on behalf of Earth Club now that Emma's gone. It is continuing to run this year. They replaced Emma with, I believe, Stella Chen and Sarah Lee are the new club directors. They had their first meeting September 9th, and they've just started a committee. So they're continuing on with projects from last year, like the sustainable clothing plans.
Great. Thank you. I mentioned earlier the Planning Commission had a fairly big turnout at its last meeting with a public hearing on an application to rezone a couple of parcels to the east of Park Lake Road, north of Grand River. So in that wedge where the railroad track goes up and Park Lake goes up, there's some undeveloped parcels back there that have a variety of single and multiple family zoning on them, so they're looking to consolidate that for a plan to build. And there was quite a bit of concern from the neighborhood residents about traffic implications and some of the wetlands and other features that they enjoy, the buffer with the railroad track noise. And there are significant wetlands on the property that were delineated for a prior application, and that was presented as part of the zoning application, but they would probably need to be, they may need to redelineate and reassess the status of those wetlands. There's a neighborhood to the northeast of that, up off of Bircham, that just east of the traffic circle, that winds around, and I think it's very similar topography. All the roads and houses are kind of up on the ridges, and there's a lot of ponds that surround everything, and it's very nice. But there are some wetlands there, so we may or may not hear a wetland use permit application from that one. My sense these days is that when people buy land in the township, they go and look at the wetland map and say, can we build anything around those? Because they know we've got the policy, so by the time they write their application, they've already stayed out of the wetlands, stayed out of the buffers, and the planning staff pretty much say you don't want to build in there unless you really want to, do a lot of extra paperwork. So we are the bureaucratic bulwark that prevents people from even proposing to build any.
Do you know when the previous delineation happened?
I can't recall off the top of my head. It was Mark's Wetlands, and it's in the last Township Planning Commission packet.
Because if they're gonna, I mean, they just raised Grand River and various other, I mean, the topography has changed around that area somewhat, and
Yeah, whether there's floodplain impacts.
to be redelineated.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yes.
I mean, we've just recently looked at floodplain impacts with pathway construction that's going to impact some wetlands, and there's been some offsetting work being done as part of that project, basically going from Campus Hill Apartments up to Okemos Road,
Yeah.
behind on the south side of the railroad tracks. That's it from the Planning Commission. Any other committees, clubs?
Transportation.
They have not met recently, and I could wax for an hour about transportation, but I won't.
Oh,
But Transportation Commission has had some resignations recently, and I know that they're certainly could use more members. So if folks are interested in that, please step forward. Yeah.
Apparently, Dan went for a little bike tour with Tim Potter around the township recently. Found out that Dan was a former BMX racer.
oh, wow.
I don't know the results of that, but I thought it was cool that both Dan and Tim were enthusiastic about some of the insights that they had on that little adventure.
I believe there were one or two county commissioners on that ride.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. But one of the Township Transportation Commission's goals, and now in the master plan, is to achieve something above honorable mention of bike-friendly community. And one of the main ways to raise your profile is through safe routes to school, and there has been a long discussion between the Transportation Commission and folks at MSU who help communities apply for safe routes to school funding. And that discussion was all focused on the sort of Bennett Woods, Chippewa campuses and what could be done to make walking and biking to those campuses safer. Unfortunately, it wasn't something that the county road department was in a position to support. So as John Wayne would say, the discussion just kind of dried up. Specifically, there was a lot of concern about the proposal to put traffic islands in the median, in the center turn lane of Bennett Road, to provide refuge like the ones at McDonald's and Meyer and on Grand River now. And that was not something the road department was interested in discussing.
Islands next to the schools? Or?
At the crosswalks, to the schools. There's two, and crossing guards and such, but they don't have very many staff. And even when they do, I understand there was a crash just a couple weeks ago, last week.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I haven't heard, is the kid all right? Do we know?
I just heard that it happened. I didn't hear anything.
I'm not sure about the kid, but I know there was a police presence at the schools during Carline a couple of days after.
So I know that's an issue that the Transportation Commission has been looking at. So if folks have thoughts, ideas on that, please consider attending, joining. They meet quarterly. They don't even meet monthly. So it's an even lower commitment than this group. You already had your turn, unless you got more.
Nope.
Public remarks.
I could make something up.
You get your guitar out.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Without objection, we're adjourned. We learned in our training, we said this last month, there is no such thing as so moved.
Right.
The township hired a consultant to come and give us leadership training.